We're also looking at the Nigerian economy. The resident representative of the International Monetary Fund office in Nigeria, Mr. Ari Eisen, has said that Nigeria needs to efficiently raise revenues and manage its expenditure if it wishes to resolve its debt issues. There you go again, that issue of debt. And now the World Bank said in its June Global Economic Prospectus, as we read earlier, marked down Nigeria's output growth for this year to 2.8% on account of slower speed seen in the first quarter. The economy is expected to see faster growth of 3% and 3.1% in 2024 and 2025. Meanwhile, the President Bola Tinubu, is aiming for a 6% growth in 2023. How will he be able to juggle all of this and surpass the forecast of both the IMF and the World Bank? Well, let's discuss that with Dr. Afolabi Oluwokere, Managing Director and Chief Economist, Analyst, Data Services and Resources, and he joins us here in the studio. Dr. Oluwokere, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
So when you heard the president, in his campaign, I think even during his campaign, it was all about 10% and all of that, but his aim for 2023 is 6% GDP growth. But there's so many hurdles that's standing against that. We just saw his removal of fuel subsidy. We're still feeling the impact on all of that and wondering what that would do to inflation numbers and economic activities. And he's confident that he will make 6%, even against the expert like IMF and World Bank. What do you see?
Thank you once again. Most times when presidents speak or governments, it's always aspirational, you don't just want to say you're going to go by 1% or 2%. You just have to aim for something that is very high. So it's not a bad idea to say I'm going to do 6%. I see that more of a medium-term to a long-term goal rather than what you can actually achieve in a particular year. Especially if you look at what happened at the quarter one, and the effect of quarter one, we still feel there's always a lagging effect of whatever happens in the economy. And as you said, we have full subsidy removal. Who knows, something may be done about the exchange rates and quite a number of other things. And government may at a time bow to pressure and try to increase wage level. And when you do that, you know the implication of that on prices, that is inflation. And when you have increase in inflation, we also know the implication of that on real growth, because GDP is actually calculated real growth. So you have to debase it with inflation. So it's a very good thing to aim at 6%. If you look at what is done in National Development Plan, as well as Agenda 2050 for the country wants to go 5%, wants to go 6%, wants to even go to 7%. You can also target 10%, it's possible. But I think it's very important for you to aim high. At least if you can do 4%, that would be a very good achievement for the president.
Because we don't see any forecast placing us at 4%. Even when we hit 3%, it's not so certain. Yeah. But have we ever been here before? If we look past, you did say that past presidents and all of that. Have we been here before? Did we get out better than we aimed for?
Yes, most times when you're already low, the chance of you moving up can be very high. For instance, if you're a child, you can go faster than an adult. Firstly, we can't get taller, but children can get far taller than we do. So if you're already low, doing about 2.2%, doing about 30%, which is actually very low. Many people have said that we are growing far less than our population.
I think our average that we're supposed to grow is about 5%.
If we don't do 5%, we are not really growing, because if you are growing at 2.52% in population, and we cannot grow at 5%, that means twice that, we're actually not really growing. And we need to do something about that. So if a president is targeting 6%, that is very useful for the country. But before you can have a 6%, there are many factors that can be at play. A very good factor, most times that is a quick win, is if you have increase in oil prices and you can do something about production level, if you can ramp up production, and if you can also implement certain policies that can make things to be quicker for people around.
What kind of policies?
You then have to be able to solve problem about price level. Inflation is a very big issue. If you have
that is a bigger threat now, because if we have fuel subsidy removed, then we'll have transportation and prices going up, and we have workers asking for an increase in minimum. That's just a skyrocketing of inflation. And
I'm sure the president, whoever he is, with his advisors, will be thinking about this. If you want to do 6%, you remember President Muhammadu at the time said he wanted to take 100 million out of poverty in 10 years or something. That's a very good thing to have. But by the time you come back to the office, you then start to say, ow. So how do we grow at 6%? If you have increase in oil prices, I mean, we already have oil prices, that's not too bad. But if you can do a lot of things in that of production, if there is forex, if you can stabilize the exchange rate, if you can have certain policies, and I think one of the things they want to do is to make sure that if you can have savings in subsidy and then put such money on things that can grow the economy. But there's something very important to look at. If you are putting a lot of money in education, in health, they're also more of medium to long-term issue. So Nigeria can actually grow 6%, Nigeria can grow 7%, Nigeria can grow 10%. If you look at
in a year.
In a year, but it's not something you can achieve very quickly. So,
okay, so you mentioned former President Muhammadu Buhari,
yes,
and his aim to remove 100,000.
Yeah.
And you also said, well, it's good for presidents or leaders to aim high. But if you continue saying it without arranging the how to get it, over time it loses its power, it loses its weight, and it just becomes something that is not taken as serious.
Yeah, you're very much right. So it's not enough for leaders to say, this is what I want to do about exchange rate, this is what I want to do about price level, this is what I want to do about growth rate. It's very important to sit down and do the work. We have removed subsidy, brilliant idea. A lot of people have supported that, but you also need to know that it has a lot of implication on prices, on exchange rates, on welfare level, on purchasing power of people, and things like that. So if you also say you want to grow by 6%, it has a lot of implication. It means that you want to work harder. But one thing you must also do as a president is to say, others have said the same thing, they couldn't achieve as much, what happened? And that's something that is very important for us as a country. We need to start looking at data. Not only data, but also the story behind the data. Why other presidents have said this, they couldn't make it. Why? Is it because of recession? In this case, we may not have recession, but there are a lot of things that are also happening globally that are still there. So there are risk factors everywhere, but it's always good to aim high.
So let's look at some of those numbers, especially from the past, yes, and see how we're able to get through it. I know with President Muhammadu Buhari, we got through recession twice.
Twice, yes.
That's with a 9 life.
I won't say it was a very unfortunate regime, but at least it's useful. And it's a good experience for us. Twice in the life of a particular president, you have a recession. If you look at some of the numbers, they may not be the best when you compare to many other of the presidents that we've had. But something that is very important to say, what are the experiences? He faced things that others probably didn't face. Oil price was at the time $28, $25 per barrel. And production was at the time less than 1 million barrels per day. So those are major challenges. He had recession twice, in 2016, in 2020 there was COVID-19, there was global crisis. So there are quite a number of things that he had. But if you look at the growth rate under him on the average, we were able to see a growth rate of 1.46%. And that is relatively low when you compare to other administration. Exchange rates under him on the average now, because sometimes people talk about the end value, but you need to look at the average because people don't feel the end, they feel the average throughout the period. He had an official exchange rate about 347 naira to $1, which was relatively higher than other. Public debts actually was about 20% of GDP on the average, and quite a number of things. But some of them are a bit lower. But when you compare to what he actually faced in terms of recession, I mean, COVID-19 wasn't the president's made, but the lesson for me is that we need to learn, and as a president or as a government now, we need to know what are the issues then time, and what are the implications of those issues, and how do we ensure that we learn from the past and do what is right for our people.
So what would you say President Bola Tinubu can learn from the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari?
You remember when the administration came in 2016, there was the issue of exchange rate, almost the same idea that we have now. And I think the president then was advised about do something about the exchange rate. And I think it took him a very long time. And a lot of investors...
I don't think anything was done about it. I mean, when President Muhammadu Buhari was leaving office, we have like how many windows active, even as we speak?
So one thing that the current president can learn is to do something about our markets. I don't want to say devaluation. They know the right thing to do. The central bank knows its job very well, more than many people that speak everywhere. But they should do something about it so that we don't have...
And the president, the current president has already said he wants unification. But obviously that's beyond just giving the statement.
Yes.
There's so many things to do if you really want to implement unification of the rates.
Yes, and many things to do and many lessons to learn. Maybe you don't just come and say, now get unified, or subsidy now removed. Maybe there should be some more background work to be done. We need to learn from experiences, our own experiences of other countries that have done similar things. You can just say exchange rate is now 500 naira to $1 or something, which is fine. But what will be the implication of that? So we need to also learn. We don't just do policies. We must learn. We must always have a feedback effect. And I think that's very important for us as a country. Otherwise, we are not really learning.
Okay, so during the, we're talking about subsidy removal now, and I think one of the presidents that received the hardest knock when he attempted to remove subsidy was President Jonathan. We're having a conversation yesterday of how a lot of the people who were against it, who organized rallies and talks against the removal of subsidy, are the same proponents of the removal of subsidy now. And I saw something, somebody said the God of Jonathan, subsidy are the God of Jonathan, because he is one of those presidents that receive a whole lot of, knocks and criticism from very high-powered individuals because he attempted to remove subsidy.
I think one thing we also learn as a country is also information management. In this particular case, I don't know how the government has been able to do this. Like, this thing is bad for you, let's remove it. It's like cancer. Maybe during Jonathan, it wasn't seen that way. But I think this time around, people see it as if, okay, if it's a problem, why don't you just take it away, cut it away?
So you think there's a better communication now than then? Because some people still say that President Tinubu shouldn't have just announced it like that. There's also that argument.
Yeah, sometimes you can shock people, provided you have done your background work. I want to believe he has done it. If he has not done it, he did that, then that's a problem. But I believe he must have done his background work. So you can shock people, but you must have done your background. Otherwise, it can backfire. So let's assume, let's give him the benefit of that he has done his background work. In the case of Jonathan, I think it was a major issue. Then people didn't allow. Then they bought the show P. Remember the show P and the Christopher Collide and the rest. And I think now that the government is also talking about palliatives, spending the $800 million of the World Bank, they need to go and learn what happened that time. I think there were a lot of issues around Shopee. So it's not just for us to say we are moving forward. We must also think backward and say, why did it fail? Now that the people are not raising placard, now that NLC has said, oh, I'm suspending my strike, unlike before, maybe there are other factors, you still must sit down and say, what can we learn from the past? How best can we do this so that our people, because one thing is important, most people that say remove it now, they will still come back in the next 2 months and 3 months and tell the president, you made a mistake. The same person, the same advisor. So the president has to be very careful around that.
So when we look at late President Yar'Adua, what lesson can President Tinubu learn from that?
I think a major lesson, we privatized our refineries before Yar'Adua came, and he came and said, oh, those things were reversed. We have a similar case now. I don't know whether we want to spend a lot of money in revamping those refineries, but we have a Dangote refinery.
Well, the rehabilitation of the Port Harcourt refinery has been on since, I think, last year. The NNPCL GMD has promised that I think there's work that's going to already started in Warri. Yeah. So we still have government actively spending on refineries.
So he has to look at that. I remember when Buhari also came, he said refineries, they are going to be revamped. Initially, we thought they would be privatized. They were never privatized. For 8 years, we were trying to see what could be done about them, and they were not actually producing much. So he has to learn lessons from that. Why did he reverse it? Was it a good policy to have said, don't privatize them? Or do we need to have private people manage those refineries? Or do we need to even scrap them? Are we losing money in those refineries? We reverse it in Jonathan, in Yar'Adua era. Maybe we should do something about it and look at that all over again. But it doesn't mean that every time we just have to privatize them. Sometimes we may have to look at whether it's government management or operation of those refineries that is more efficient, or are there corruption issue, inefficient issue, and how can we address some of these issues? Those are lessons that he has to learn from that.
Then for former President Obasanjo, I know we cleared our debt. We are back to the issue of debt. And at this time, it's like we're going to have to look really, how can we clear the debt? How did President Obasanjo do it then? Are we going to go back begging?
No, I'm just looking at the numbers. Obasanjo started with a 24.85% public debt as a percent of GDP, and he ended with 7.26%. That was a major one, and he got the $18 billion forgiveness from the Paris Club. That was about 60% of our public debt, of our external debt that time. That was a major one. But now we are back. At that time, we were about $31 billion in external public debt. But now we are back to about 41 to 42 billion dollars. That is a major one. Maybe we are going to look for debt forgiveness. If we are not going to look at, Look at what is also happening.
Aren't we the giants of Africa? Can't we solve our problems?
Sometimes you are a giant, but you need walking sticks, you know.
You're too old to walk on your own.
But by the time you bounce back, you can then be a giant, true giant that you are supposed to be. That's what we should be as a country. So
are you saying that President Tinubu should now look more to what former President Obasanjo did? That is very important. But you know, to even get a debt forgiveness, you also have to do some restructuring within your economy. And you then have to agree whether those things are in the benefits of your country people or it's also in the benefits of the creditors. Yeah, because I know Ghanaians now, they are paying more taxes for them to have qualified for the IMF bailout. Yeah. And it's not easy on individuals. It's not easy. But nothing says we can't still manage a debt of 7 trillion even when you had the ways and means. So we are going to be about 35% of GDP in public debt. It's very high. But I think as everybody has said, we need to do a lot of things about revenue. But not only about revenue, we also need to do something about efficiency of our spending. Maybe sometimes government spend money on things that private sector can also actually offtake, rather than spending our money on those kind of things. So it's very important for the president to also so that revenue is also what I think the World Bank also talked about. We need to boost our revenue. This has been like conversations for so long. Non-oil exports, we still have the issue of oil theft. We can't even meet up with our quota given by OPEC. So, I mean, what can President Tinubu do, low-hanging fruit as they call it, to boost our revenue in a short term? Oil. That's I mean, when you say short term means now. If you can produce a lot of oil, you can make more money. Asking people to pay more, especially when you have removed subsidy, where you may do something about exchange rates, can sometimes be counterproductive. How much can you make from oil? It's very important for us to look at that. But another thing is that people can say, oh, but oil cannot be forever. But as long as it lasts, allow or enable or incentivize production, incentivize investment in that sector. But whatever money you make from that, then use the money to provide facilities for people to be able to be more productive. You make money when you produce, you make money when you export. But our manufacturing sector really don't export much. We export very little, unfortunately. Yes. And we need to do something about that. We need to support them. Otherwise, but that is not something you can make now. The same person that has not been able to do very well, you can't go back and say, pay more taxes. Sometimes which is what we have with the 2022 finance bill. I mean, manufacturers and entrepreneurs, SMEs are being asked to pay more. And if you ask them to pay more, some of them also ask for another concession, another place. Give me a grant, support me with exchange rates. At the end of it, it's going to be +1, -1. Then the other side of it is dealing with our costs. And a lot of people have started conversation on cost of governance. If we can do a little bit about our revenue and then do a little bit more about the leakages and cost of governance, perhaps there'll be a somewhat balance, you know, that would also help. Definitely. And if you can do something about that cost, people then have more trust in you. And I think the problem in Nigeria is that... But if we talk about doing something about cost of governance, what do you envision? How? I think government has done something. I mean, if you look at the TSA, nice policy. I mean, I've done a work on TSA before, and we tried to write on why government should do it when they were trying to do it. It was tried under Obasanjo, Jonathan, and later Buhari was able to have the guts to do it. That's a very nice one. The way you pay salaries, I mean, trying to remove ghost workers, those are very useful things that the government has done. But you also have to say, what benefit goes to public office holders? You know, when people hear millions of naira, billions of dollars, I mean, if you're on the news and you hear that somebody is paid 100 million and they ask you to come and pay more taxes, you probably will try to evade and avoid such taxes. So government should do something about those kind of things. Manage those information very well. When they are right, they do them. But when they are just too much, they can find a way of reducing them. Because when people hear them, they kind of say, why must you pay? They are using this money to enjoy. I mean, something like that. And, you know, the rich sometimes can live a delicious life and then make people think, don't pay taxes, you know. All right, we must pay taxes. All right, yeah, of course we have to pay taxes. Thank you so much, Dr. Afolabi Oluwokere, Managing Director and Chief Economist of Analyst Data Services and Resources, taking us back and lessons that we could learn from some of those past administrations. Thank you for your time and sharing your research with us. Thank you very much.